Hey guys, it's Captain Forest here, and in today's video, I am doing a Death Battle collab prediction video. I've got some friends on the channel, so starting off with my good friend here, Korin.
What is up, everyone? Korin O'Keefe, thanks for having me back, and this may be on my channel as well, but regardless, thanks.
And I also have KKrimbus.
Hello everyone. Hope you're all having a good day. Thank you for having me on the channel.
No problem. And if Debater would like to share any thoughts, I'll still introduce him, Debater as well.
Heyo, it's me, Mr. Nomadic, otherwise known as Debater.
Perfect. Okay, so Korin, he's going to cover some Thor stuff, and then after that, the mic's going to get passed over to KKrimbus. He will talk about Vegeta and what he brings to the table, and then after they go over both combatants, I will chime in and give my thoughts. And if Debate would like to give his thoughts too, if he wants to, he's more than welcome to afterwards. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead, pass the microphone to Korin.
Alrighty. So starting off with Thor, I'll go over some stuff for quote unquote, or so to speak, base Thor from like the classic days, some stuff from modern times here and there. The AP feats, speed feats. I'll go over some Rune King Thor stuff, Cosmic King, and even more recent current stuff like Phoenix Thor, etc., etc. So starting off, base Thor, even in the classic days, we've seen specifically Eric Masterson Thor clash with another Thor from the future, and their clash sent shockwaves across the entire cosmos and affected all planes of reality simultaneously. Now, this is impressive because when you look at the totalities of realities in Marvel, they contain higher infinities greater than the previous infinities ad infinitum. And we also know, this is shown in Howard the Duck, one of Howard the Duck's comics, a universe comprises a whole multiverse and its metaversal spaces. So right off the bat, this feat could easily be argued as anywhere from multi-plus to high hyperversal very easily. Now, around this same time, we also see Thor fight the World Snake. Now, in this fight with the World Snake, excuse me, they actually shivered the 9 realms. Something to keep in mind, Asgard on its own is consistently stated to be beyond space, time, all known dimensions, and even mortal man's wildest dreams of reality. So right there, you have 2 very impressive feats that you should take into consideration. We also know Thor is stronger. Now we're talking base to base, back pre-annihilation, classic day. So in a way, Surfer, right? Base Surfer around that point at least. And base Thor was stated by Loki to be stronger than Surfer. And this is, Loki said this, right, mind you, keep in mind, when he was fighting a bloodlusted Surfer. So this is impressive because Loki himself can simultaneously affect every conceivable astral and metaphysical plane. And yet, Thor is stronger than Surfer, who can contend with this Loki and he's also stronger than Loki consistently and overall in that regard. Now, it gets even crazier because, or I should say even more consistent. It gets crazier in a little bit, but it gets more consistent for this type of scaling when you look at stuff that Hyperion has done, specifically when he tanked the destruction of 2 entire universes. Now, this is from the incursions. This is the incursions of not just like little 3D universes. No, this is the totality of entire realities. You know, like the Ultimates reality, for as an example, Earth 616. You know how they're all their own realities. Well, they're like the totalities of these realities, essentially. And Hyperion survived the destruction, and you literally see him floating in the white void. This is crazy because, again, so to speak, base Thor is easily in the ballpark, same ballpark as Hyperion. And as I mentioned, these universes are far more complex and structured way differently than a standard observable universe model, any fourth dimensional structure, any 5D structure. Like, these can actually reach infinite dimensional in terms of infinite higher dimensions in that regard. And again, even if we completely just lowball the heck out of them, multi-plus is honestly the lowest you could really go. However, high hyper, to me anyways, seems to be very reasonable and consistent, to say the least. Or even outer. You could argue outer versal. Again, because Asgard itself is consistently depicted as beyond space-time, all known dimensions, mortal man's wildest dreams of reality. And yeah, it just pretty freaking consistent when you really break it down. We also have stuff like Hulk. Keep in mind, Hulk, like Savage Classic Hulk, stuff like that, has feats of, threatening and affecting Nightmare's realm. Nightmare's realm itself is also beyond space-time. It's timeless. Everything in his realm is metaphor, etc., etc. So, once again, consistency. Hulk also destroyed Nightcrawler's entire dimension in his battle with the Nameless One. And again, Thor has consistently fought Hulk throughout the years, has even beat him more often than not. Hulk's got some obvious W's over him as well, but more often than not, Thor has demonstrated to take a few more W's at the end of the day. So, very good scaling for Thor. Very good indeed. Now, if we move over to Rune King Thor, Rune King Thor was able to become powerful enough to go up against those who sit above in shadow. He was able to stop the Ragnarok cycle, right? That's connected to the world tree, and in turn, the entire multiverse. Those who sit above in shadow are beyond the multiverse. They exist in a part of the outside, or the land of could it be, should it be, in an area within this large, non-existent realm beyond eternity himself. Now, Rune King Thor also obtains a level of omnipresence. This, in terms of AP, would also put Thor as Rune King around the, at bare minimum, high outer versal ranges, if not far higher. Even if you want to go just downplay to the bone, you really can't get any less than outerversal. I mean, Eternity himself is above the in-betweener. And the in-betweener is literally the concepts of concepts. He literally walks beyond all dualistic concepts. Eternity would smack him in the face. It's actually a misconception that some people have, that all in-betweeners above Eternity because of some vague, classic statement, but that's completely not the case. It's really consistent that Eternity is depicted above the in-betweener, and Eternity is shown to just be beyond other realms as well that are beyond concepts of space and time, like the macroverse. The macroverse is above multiversal physicality. That's below Eternity. At the 7th and 8th iterations, it's absolutely insane when you really think about it. Marvel's just a lot higher than a lot of people give it credit for, or at least some. And again, even the in-betweener alone, who is not necessarily top tier in the verse at all, he already transcends all dualistic concepts. He is a concept of concepts, and Eternity can just rot him, right? So just that alone really just goes to show that Thor is not lacking whatsoever in terms of AP or anything of the sort. And we're talking about beings, right? Those who sit above in shadows. They transcend in themselves the multiverse. They feed on stories, etc., etc. It's absolutely insane. And Rune King Thor is just on that level. It's absolutely nonsense in a good way. And if we look at Cosmic King Thor, he was able to actually absorb an amped Galactus power, right? Power cosmic. This Galactus was stated to be pretty much more powerful than anything he's had before. This would at least bare minimum apply to his Devourer self, even if you don't want to say Lifebringer, which you could argue Lifebringer. This at bare minimum applies to his Devourer self. And speaking of that, right, we've seen a Galactus duke it out with the in-betweener, someone who I just previously established as just being inherently outerversal, very inherently, naturally. And Galactus is on his same level of fundamental importance. He himself is a concept of concepts. He's the balance between eternity and death herself. It's crazy. And we've seen Galactus go up against Scryer and the other. Their battle was on the same level as what happened in the Chaos War, right? Oblivion himself directly made the comparison. They were going to literally destroy all universes. Everything was going to be destroyed in Galactus's battle with Scryer and the other. And yet here we have Cosmic King Thor contending with a much more powerful Galactus. Yes, folks, and absorbed his power. And then he contended with the Black Winter, right? The Black Winter devoured the 6th cosmos and was threatening the 8th. Now that's absolutely insane. Because, again, in-betweener, macroverse. But let's talk about other stuff as well, right? Let's talk about the superflow for a moment. How the superflow is between and above all universes. It's a conceptual realm. It's essentially conceptually beyond infinite dimensional constructs and essentially making it at least outerversal in itself, the superflow. Now there's also arguments for superflow between universes and the true multiversal superflow, right? Which either way, it doesn't matter because eternity is above both naturally. And as I mentioned, the superflow is a conceptual realm. Combat on that level is metaphor. And it's where aspects and abstracts, right, can use their full power without affecting normal space. So right off the bat, another outerversal realm that's within eternity himself. Now we have the neutral zone. Now the neutral zone contains predatory concepts and is shown to be completely beyond and outside of even the superflow itself. Absolutely insane scaling. Just, and Thor's over here contending with the guy who can devour the guy who encompasses all of this stuff I'm talking about. It's quite insane when you really think about it under a critical lens. Now, we also know Thor, Cosmic King. He was able to go up against Null. He contended with Null to an extent. He bashed his jaw. He dislocated his jaw one good time. Null had to get the all black out and rod him in the back with it, nullify that immortality for a moment, make him watch his world burn. You know, in King in Black. Good read in its own right. This is insane because Surfer fought the Griever at the end of all worlds, who also scales above eternity. Surfer fought him for a few minutes, yet he didn't really want to smoke with Null, and Cosmic King brought the smoke straight to him. He brought the hammer down. So, pretty insane stuff. Null also rods Celestials, you know, like they're nothing. He gave Celestials the big rod, helped him create all black. So, Cosmic King is definitely not lacking whatsoever. Now, current Phoenix Thor, even more powerful than what I just previously mentioned. And the Phoenix in itself, right? Phoenix, for the record, is obviously another one of Thor's mothers. That was revealed in more like modern times, more recent comics. The Phoenix is one of Thor's mothers. But the Phoenix in its own right is insane, right? It's pretty much the avatar for the White Hot Room. The White Hot Room itself being in the mystery, it's like with it part of the mystery, which is beyond even the far shore. The far shore is beyond even the neutral zone. It's at the edge of everything, literally at the edge of everything, beyond all levels of time, space, life, death. It's just raw, far nothingness. And the mystery and White Hot Room is beyond that. And the Phoenix is essentially like the avatar for the White Hot Room, and it picks host, this and that and the third. And current Thor is just absolutely insane. Crazy scaling. He just upscales all this other stuff. And the Phoenix amp on top of his own, along with going up against Mjolnir recently. Yes, I'm not going to get into too many spoilers. I recommend y'all going to see that, going to read these comics, keep up to date. But just keep in mind that Thor is not lacking. Any way you really slice it, he's reaching high levels of power, very high levels beyond what a lot of people would give him credit for, beyond any infinite 3D scope, beyond even infinite dimensional scopes, depending on how you go about it, especially like for base Thor, but especially his higher forms, like, so to speak, Rune King, Cosmic King, Phoenix Thor, etc. They're all reaching insane levels of just beyond dimensionality as a whole to such a degree you might have to start stacking uncountable infinite sets to hope to even catch up with other characters. So in terms of speed, easily MFTL plus, bare minimum, he can keep up with Surfer, who literally searched an entire galaxy in a panel. Pretty insane. That means he had to go to each like planetoid, moon, probably planet, all this. If he sensed life on an asteroid, he had to go to an asteroid. He searched an entire galaxy in like a second. That's insane. Obviously, the Marvel universes have several statements of being infinitely large, and Surfer and Thor can both cross these infinite distances in a finite period of time. So infinite speed. Surfer and Thor can both time travel thanks to their speed. It's more blatant for Surfer, but Thor does have feats, especially like in the classic days, like in base, swinging his hammer at a certain speed, he can time travel. But regardless of that, he definitely scales to others who can. And Rune King and Cosmic King are just so far beyond linear time. It would be very far fetched to say that there's some kind of finite or even infinite speed. It would be pretty odd because they're just far beyond our linear jurisdiction of time, just to such a degree. It's unbelievable. So yeah, immeasurable, irrelevant, and we even seen Mjolnir recently go to the farthest edges, like to the far shore, likely, and back in like a moment, like minutes. They went from like to the far shore to Earth and back and all that in a very short amount of time, which is insane. Thor can obviously use his hammer in flight. He can react to it to a degree. And even a weakened Odin could somewhat react to this Mjolnir at this point. So, yeah, with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over to KKrimbus. Let him give some thoughts and some scaling for Vegeta. And then we'll bring up some more like hacksy abilities, stamina, kind of crazy stuff like that here in a little bit.
All right. So let's move on to Vegeta. And when going over Vegeta scaling, a lot of it Death Battle have covered before, but not in the biggest, the most extreme way, much like as Korin has been showing off. So we know for a fact, very early on in Dragon Ball, in fact, episode 13 for Dragon Ball Super, we know that Goku and Beerus were able to clash hands in only 4 blows. We're going to annihilate the entire macrocosm, make it an empty void. This is extremely impressive because the macrocosm is more than just a universe. It has the afterlife, and the afterlife has things inside of it the size of the universe or much bigger. An example of something the size of the universe would be heaven. In 3 different guidebooks and a statement from the anime, we know for a fact that heaven is stated to be the same size as the universe. Yet when we're on Snake Way and looking straight up, we can't even see heaven. So the afterlife must be gigantic, in the bare minimum of billions of times the size of the universe to be so massively large. We also know from guidebook statements and some implications from the anime that the afterlife is most likely a higher dimension. Even if it's not, the space between the afterlife and the living world would therefore be a higher dimension regardless. This would mean that Goku and Beerus going to destroy the entire macrocosm is actually affecting a higher dimensional plane on a 4th dimensional scale. We can bring out this much further because we know that Goku gets stronger in the fight. In fact, only moments after this feat, we know that Goku and the Super Saiyan can do a Kamehameha so hard he lights up and nearly destroys the entire macrocosm on accident. Beerus was forced to nullify this attack, and he continually gets stronger, even surpassing it in his base form, either at the end of the fight or when he goes in this next arc against Frieza. They continually get stronger and stronger, facing Goku Black, Hit, and several other strong opponents. In the Goku Black arc, we do have some other interesting feats, especially for the anime, in the form of Infinite Zamasu, also known as Mugen Zamasu. This Zamasu was able to merge himself with the entire universe and expand continually further to the point where his power was felt through a different timeline, being the present. We know that the timelines have to exist on a different time axis, and very much could be a higher dimension. This could be scaling on a 5-dimensional scale. This would be similar to Goku Black being able to slice a hole or a rift in dimensions and timeline when he used his scythe in the anime. So this could be consistent at a 5D scale. Vegeta should definitely scale to this, as he scaled to a suppressed Jiren, who Vegeta himself stated was stronger than anyone he'd ever fought before, and proceeded to knock over this same Jiren after telling him to try harder with his final flash. Vegeta continually gets stronger, has trained much more, and has recently reached the level of Ultra Ego after training with Beerus. This means he's got the level of a God of Destruction, and God of Destructions look down on Infinite Zamasu with Beerus finding it only be a little bad in comparison to Jiren, who he thought was quite terrifying. With that, we can say that Vegeta easily scales way above fourth dimensional power, scaling past the afterlife and the macrocosm, and very much possibly into fifth dimensional scaling, going past infinite Zamasu. If we go more into the speed side of things, Dragon will have a lot of speed feats crossing the universe. Would this be something along going to Namek in 6 days on Goku's ship, the Namekian Dragon Balls going from Namek back to Earth in only 2 minutes, again the Goku versus Frieza fight, or Pikkon and Goku flying from heaven to hell? As said earlier, heaven on its own is the size of the universe, and the afterlife is a higher dimensional structure, so we can easily get way beyond just finite numbers for that speed feat alone. In the clashes of Goku and Beerus, we actually know that the shockwaves, while they could cross the entire macrocosm, we do know that Goku and Beerus could actually back up and blitz their own shockwaves. Goku can obviously react to his Kamehameha that we mentioned earlier, that could light up the entire macrocosm. And as said earlier as well, Infinite Zamasu is able to spread from one timeline, reaching into another, if not spilling over. Vegeta would be more powerful than him and arguably should scale to the same speed. So we easily have Vegeta being able to cross a universe instantly, even in its base form, to these higher dimensional speed feats. Much like if he was frozen in time by hit, he should have the power to forcefully move in it. This would be inaccessible speed and immeasurable speed if he scales to the Infinite Zamasu's spreading. So we could say that in terms of physical stats, we'd say Vegeta currently, especially with his Ultra Ego powers, would be inaccessible speed to immeasurable speed with fourth to fifth dimensional power.
After hearing all the scaling, I would have to say that Thor would ultimately be the winner of this. I would also like to note that if this fight does get into a skill confrontation, that based off from what I've heard and what I know about the characters, I would say Thor would bully him. So overall, I think Thor is going to win this death battle.
Okay. So I'm going to just quickly talk about some of Thor's hacks and stuff real quick. And I'll give my thoughts as well. So, believe it or not, Mr. Goldilocks here has some pretty impressive hacks. So Thor has the ability to absorb energy that his opponent fires at him. He can redirect it at his opponents with 100 times more powerful force than the attack was originally was. Thor can absorb people's immortality and life force. He's also been able to transmutate objects. He's demonstrated when he basically threw his hammer at a pyramid back into an orange grove. We've also seen Thor turn Absorbing Man into helium. We've also seen Thor literally just seal Hyperion inside of a glass ball. So he has some pretty impressive sealing hacks too. And he was also able to BFR Kang the Conqueror to Limbo, which is a realm that is beyond space and that is beyond the concepts of space and time. So Limbo itself is a outerversal, possibly even high outer realm, which is very impressive. So he can literally just BFR you to these conceptual realms. And obviously, if you don't have the necessary speed to get out of it, then you're pretty much screwed. You're trapped there. Thor himself, he's also demonstrated that he can obviously control lightning. He can summon it from the sky, electrocute people with it. He also has his he has his own Berserker Rage, which is called the Warrior's Madness, where it gives him a 10 times increase in stats, so it makes him a lot more stronger and faster in combat. And of course, he has his nasty signature ability with his hammer called Mjolnir. It's called the God Blast. It's extremely powerful. It literally one-shots powerful characters. He also demonstrated this, in fact, when he fought against the Black Winter. Literally God Blast the Black Winter and one-shot that thing, which is pretty impressive. Now, obviously, it does depend on which Thor you go over, because Thor does vary in character, but Thor does have a lot of hexes in general, especially with like power nullification and power stealing, as demonstrated when he became Cosmic King Thor, where he was able to strip Galactus of his powers, which is a pretty impressive feat, I must say. Now, that's pretty much it for Thor. There are some more hexes and other things that he has in his disposal, but I think that's gonna pretty much suffice to say in terms of like this battle. I don't think you'll need to use many of them, but I figured I'd bring some noteworthy ones just for the viewers to know. So in terms of like battle, I think Vegeta's gonna have a hard time. Thor is just vastly above him in AP. Even if you use like the weaker versions of Thor, like Unworthy Thor, Unworthy Thor's still built different. He's still powerful, even if you lowball him to the absolute degree. You know, he'd be higher into like, he'd be like high hyperversal plus, or even like multi plus if you lowball, but he'd be higher into it. So he had higher AP, speed. He's just way too fast for Vegeta, unfortunately. So he'd blitz Vegeta, even if you like lowball Thor. Thor is just way too fast for him. He has many ways to dispatch off Vegeta, especially with the hammer. And even if we was to not include any of Thor's hexes and just straight up go off with like skill, he's just way too skilled for Vegeta. He'd beat Vegeta in skill pretty easily. Now, as mentioned before, like within character, it's not going to really matter much because he has other advantages to win anyway if we're just using standard Thor, like King Thor. But if we use like Cosmic King Thor is a lot more ruthless, a lot more aggressive, and he will resort to using more hexes in character compared to his other self. So yeah, I think more often than not, I think Thor takes victory. Now, I don't know what Death Battle is going to give them. I don't know what Death Battle is going to mention for Thor. I'd be pretty surprised if they mention some like Uni Plus, maybe some like Multiversal Plus stuff at least. I don't know if they'll mention like very like lower degrees of AP like Star or Solar System or Multi-Galaxy, but I'm pretty convinced they'd probably go higher. But yeah, those are my thoughts at least.
All right. Well, KKrimbus, you want to give your final thoughts? Maybe give some abilities of Vegeta's, maybe how they fare against Thor, and I'll come in later and give my final thoughts.
All right, then. So, in terms of some abilities that Vegeta would have, we go with the more noticeable and more recent ones. The most notable one for any Saiyan is their adaptation, as we all know. They can quite quickly adapt and grow from damage they take. Recently showing, especially in the Goku Black Arc and against Jiren, that they can adapt from taking damage. So if Vegeta was to survive some attacks, he could potentially get stronger and close the gap. However, this massive gap that was mentioned, with the bare minimum being high hyperversal, I very much doubt Vegeta would make very much headway, if at all. That's like trying to reach an infinite number with only finite numbers. It's probably not going to happen. We also know that in the Ultra Ego form, he has the powers of a god of destruction, which are able to erase things from existence, even from time at the same time. So if you erase someone from one timeline, it should erase them from another. However, Thor would probably be able to resist this existing or overpowering beings who are beyond space and time as high as like the superflow. So Thor would most likely resist that. In terms of skill, I think Vegeta has got less skill than Thor, despite his warrior prowess. I think you guys covered that bit very well. I do think Death Battle will go a similar route to they did in the Reverse Flash versus Goku Black video. They'll probably scale finite numbers really, really high for Vegeta, get him millions, hopefully billions, big numbers for universes, and then scale Thor to, he can destroy beings who can destroy the multiverse very ruthlessly, especially if he gets annoyed. So I think that's the route they'll probably go down. And that's my thoughts. So I'll pass the mic back to Korin.
All right. Thank you. So for my final thoughts, here's how I kind of see it. It's like there's multiple ways, right? So let's just say this: if they do both only end up getting, like, for death battle, let's say Vegeta gets scaled above black, like even higher than what they gave for the previous stuff, or even for like black, or scale him off Broly, etc. You know, really high into uni, use the volume scaling, and let's say they only like scale Thor. If they only use, I don't know which Thor they're going to use. Let's just, I'll give a couple scenarios. So if they use the, you know, base like classic Thor, which would be kind of odd because there's a lot Thor's like has other stuff, but I'm just saying if we use like base modern before he started like becoming king or got the Thor force or any other thing like that, for example, or like classic stuff, and they only scaled them, let's say they only scale them to the Hulk feat from like Hulk and Broly, then I mean, you know, Vegeta's going to have the AP edge in their show. That's just how it's going to be in that way. And then I would venture to say, unless they have a new calc, then I likely seeing them in this specific scenario. Vegeta could potentially have the speed as well, especially how much higher he upscales than even Goku Black. So again, it really depends in that specific scenario, which is a route they could go. And if that's the case, Vegeta could just end up being, or they could make it to where, oh, Thor's a little faster. Vegeta is just way stronger, though. He'd be able to like handle all this. Thor doesn't use a lot of hacks in character, or this and that and the third. Again, this is just one hypothetical. So it's just one way it could go. And then if they do use Cosmic Thor, which is if they use the more recent stuff where he fought the Black Winter, fought Null, and at the very least scaled him to multi-eternity or to the omniverse, multiverse, however they want to go about it, then they have pretty much implied that's like infinite. It's infinite. It's an infinite multiverse. Like on their channel, they've implied that. They've even like in recent Scarlet Witch, they brought up, oh, an omniversal scale. So if they have Thor as Cosmic King or even other Thors at this omniversal scale, then that seems to be implied as just way above multi plus. That seems to be more along the lines of like how it's implied on their show. It seems like they're trying to imply it's like high hyper to outer versal or even higher. That's how it seemed to be implied recently. So if that's the case, Vegeta really just doesn't have any chance. If they scale Cosmic King to that, there's just no way for Vegeta to win at all. And because it's like even the entire infinite multiverse, again, easily infinite dimensional. Heck, you can, again, as I brought up, totalities of universes can already be argued very easily to high hyper consistently. So, yeah, at the very least for Cosmic King, he would be, I could see them giving him the infinite dimensional multiverse, and that would just outclass whatever they can give Vegeta. Now, if they do, for some reason, say Cosmic King is only like multi-plus, they imply he's like infinite 4D, and they, for some reason, scale like Vegeta out of nowhere to like 5D, then like, I mean, that's a dimensional AP gap. So that's another scenario where Thor could lose, even as, unfortunately, even as Cosmic King, if that's the route they choose to go. But again, based off what we've recently seen and also just how Marvel is really just consistently structured, blatant feats from Cosmic King himself. He is one of the most like pretty much current. Well, he's not the most current, but he's one of the more current Thors, or they might use Phoenix Thor again, who pretty freaking crazy. So it really depends on the AP for me, right? For me, I would say Thor, like Cosmic King, especially Phoenix Thor, Rune King, they solo the entirety of the Dragon Ball franchise. So I would just say that flat out for me. Like I would say they just, any of them individually solo just by existing the entire franchise of Dragon Ball, no matter what scaling you give Dragon Ball. So that'd be me. And if we stick with just like base, so to speak, Thor, even unworthy, I mean, even he has like, again, multi plus, high hyper feats, even outer versal. Like you can argue his existence naturally is outer versal because of Asgard. If you want to argue it's outer consistently, which I mean, I'm not opposed to. I do it myself. But so, I mean, I think Thor stomps. Like, I actually think, I'm just going to be honest. I think Thor completely dog walks any Dragon Ball character to the utmost degree you can possibly comprehend. I sincerely think that. So now here's the thing, right? Thor, in terms of like, he also has immortality to consider. He's actually very fundamental. He's an archetypal being, actually. He's actually like in his own right, archetypal. He's very important to reality. Like gods in Marvel are fundamental aspects and myths and elemental archetype. Like Thor has been said to be like an elemental archetype. And it's just so consistent that they're definitely trying to tell us that these gods are fundamental. They're really, even if you kill them, they'll be brought back. And this is shown with Ragnarok cycles too, like in the Loki cycle, and look at in Loki 2019, we see like Wolverine, Spider-Man, Thor, their stories are just stacked. They're so important to reality. Thor, in that regard, is very fundamental, and I just ultimately don't see a way for Vegeta to fully put him down, to like kill him per se, due to how fundamental and important his existence actually is. I don't think Vegeta will be able to meet the requirements to kill Thor ultimately at the end of the day. Like, yeah, you might get rid of him for a second, right? But he's so important. You can